Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is Congresswoman Lisa McClain, chair of the House Republican Conference. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We are in day 35 of the government shutdown right now, and based on where a lot of Americans are sitting, doesn't really seem like there's an end in sight. Is that true? To start off the conversation, I'm curious if there are conversations between Democrats and Republicans right now on how to end the shutdown.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations happening right now, primarily, obviously, on the Senate side, but there's definitely conversations happening. Listen, this has been really last week and last Saturday, we saw 42 million Americans lose their food stamps. Um, we saw people missing paychecks, TSA workers, air traffic controllers missing paychecks. Last week, at the end of last week, was really the week when the rubber met the road, and it was not a thought anymore. It actually happened. So I think you saw labor unions come out, pilot associations come out. Actually, we've done polling. Not that anyone wins in a shutdown, because they don't, because it's the American people that get hurt. But people are frustrated, and they're calling on the Democrats to open up the government. So it's really getting real.
And to that point, according to polls, more Americans are concerned about how this shutdown is impacting them now opposed to a month ago. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune said on Monday that he thinks lawmakers are getting close to an off-ramp here. So based on those conversations that you're hearing on the Senate side, I know you're not in the Senate side, but on the Senate side and perhaps in the House too, what does that off-ramp look like?
Well, the off-ramp looks like today's election day. And I think the normal Democrats needed to cede the power to their radical base. They did that. It's over. Chuck Schumer can pound his chest and say that this is the longest shutdown. So now whatever goals they wanted to achieve, they can achieve. And some off ramps now are starting to happen, right? We really don't have anything to offer because we passed a clean CR with an end date that was bipartisan of November 21st. So we did our job in the House. I think the issue is Democrats want certainty of outcome, and they're using healthcare for that right now. I don't think they're going to get a certainty of outcome, but I think there's some talk about what's going to happen with the ACA credits? Can we get a vote on the ACA credits? And we've said all along, open up the government and let's have these debates. Let's have these discussions. But it doesn't behoove anybody when the government's closed.
And to that point, the only point of agreement I hear from my conversations with Republicans and Democrats are there are problems with healthcare in this country. The costs are too high. We need to find a solution. Obviously, the timing is the really big point of contention here. And Speaker Mike Johnson, he said a few times during the shutdown, once the government's open, the GOP's ready to go. We have a plan. We have proposals. What does that look like? What is the Republican plan or proposals when it comes to addressing healthcare costs?
Well, the issue with the healthcare costs right now is there's a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse with the ACA credits, right? People who are making $600,000 a year really, I'm hard pressed to see that those people really deserve and need those extended healthcare credits. So we want to clean that up. Also, we need to lower premiums for the American taxpayer, for the American person. What is happening is healthcare rates have increased. And all of the monies, all of those subsidies, they're not going to the American person, they're going to the insurance company. So the insurance company is getting richer and richer, and healthcare is getting more and more expensive. We have to fix that. We need to have some PBM reform. So there's not one silver bullet. It's a big mess. Obamacare does not work. The Affordable Care Act is anything but affordable. And we're happy to begin to clean up that mess, but we need to open the government.
And you mentioned the income of $600,000. You don't think that someone who makes that much deserves these tax credits. A group of bipartisan lawmakers also think something to that effect, too. They've released what they call a bipartisan principles to temporarily extend and reform these ACA tax credits. And I want to read off of some of that framework. It extends the enhanced premium tax credits for 2 years. It caps the credit based on income, and it puts what they describe as guardrails in place to prohibit improper tax credit payments. Is that something that you would get on board with and support?
Well, I would want to look at it first before I just, have 3 lines. But we need healthcare reform, right? The only people that are making a lot of money right now are the insurance companies and the PBMs. And we have Americans who their premiums keep going up year after year after year. And they're not getting the subsidy. They're not getting lower premiums. They're not getting better care. But the insurance companies and the PBMs sure are getting richer every year. We have to bridge that gap and we have to fix that. How we fix that, again, I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think we got to take a look at all of the options that are on the table to do that.
I just have to ask about timing again, because I can imagine as a viewer here, I would be pretty frustrated because I listen to conversations with Democrats, I listen to conversations with Republicans, and they all say, like I said earlier, there's healthcare cost problems in this country. Most Americans are one healthcare disaster away from bankruptcy. And now the argument is just timing. Republicans saying, open the government first, then we'll have these conversations. Democrats saying, we're not having these conversations, we're not opening the government until we have these conversations. I mean, what's it going to take to come to the table and come to some sort of agreement? Or do you think that perhaps there is a bit of politics being played here because we have already been so long into the shutdown?
Yeah, well, I'll remind everyone, Republicans did our job. We voted to keep the government open. We voted to keep democracy running, to committee work running. So Republicans voted yes. We voted yes to keep the economy running. The Democrats right now voted no. We want to shut the government down. And that's where we're at right now. We put a clean CR. So there's nothing to give. There's nothing to negotiate because we negotiated in good faith. We didn't put one partisan policy rider in the clean CR. No games, no gimmicks. We acted in good faith, and the Democrats are just now obstructing. So as soon as the Democrats want to do what the right thing, of which they voted for 13 times prior to, as recently as March, remember, these are their funding levels, not ours. I would say, yes, there are political games that are being played, but they're not being played by Republicans right now. And the only people that are getting hurt are the American people.
I think something that most Americans can agree on is that they don't like to see the government shut down. That's according to polls. Also, when you look at polls, they're taking the temperature of the blame game here. And more Americans are blaming Trump as well as Republicans for the shutdown opposed to Democrats. Democrats are still shouldering a lot of the blame too, but more Americans point the finger at President Trump as well as Republicans. Do you think Republicans are winning this messaging battle here?
Well, I disagree wholeheartedly with that premise because CNN just did a poll as recently as last week and said that the Democrats are more to blame. I was just out in the field and we just did a poll that said the Democrats are more to blame. In fact, more than 6 points it moved negatively towards Democrats. So my point with the polling is nobody wins in a government shutdown. That's why Republicans want to keep the government open, because the only people that lose in a government shutdown are the hardworking Americans, not to mention what happens economically. I mean, look at what we're losing every week economically, right? If air traffic controllers, like Sean Duffy talked about, begin closing air traffic in certain regions, tell me the economic effect that that's going to have on the economy. I can definitely tell you it's not going to be positive. So I don't agree with the premise. I think the only people that lose are the American people.
Let's talk about those impacts here. I'll start with Transportation Secretary Duffy, his remarks. He said today that we could see mass chaos if the shutdown goes on for another week. You'll see mass flight delays, you'll see mass cancellations, and you may see us close certain parts of the airspace because we just cannot manage it. It's almost Thanksgiving, then the holiday season is upon us. It's busy travel time. I mean, what do you make of that?
He's right. I mean, the number one job is we got to make sure that people are safe when they fly. And you have air traffic controllers, you have TSA agents that aren't getting paid right now but are asked to do their job. The economic impact on that will be great, not to mention the emotional impact if you're trying to get home, for the holidays to see your loved ones. That's going to have an impact, and it's really not necessary, right? The Democrats voted 13 times as recently as March for this exact CR to keep the government open and funding. So it's really simple. Open the government, and we don't need to worry about this.
And speaking of Thanksgiving as well, I mean, it's a big food month, November,
Yeah.
then December with the holidays as well. And the Trump administration's using contingency funding to issue half of SNAP benefits this month. They were cut in half to around 42 million Americans. That's 1 in 8 Americans who receive SNAP. Do you think that in this government shutdown fight, the poorest Americans here are caught in the crossfire? And what's your message to them?
Well, I've actually been out at some food banks, and it's not a pretty picture. In fact, the food bank that I was at, they had more cars than they've ever had before. And where we used to give 3 bags of potatoes, now we're only being able to give 2 bags of potatoes. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're a family that relies on that, that really hits home. So I think it hits those people disproportionately, the people that need it most. And you heard this number 2 person in the Democratic House say, I know there's going to be suffering. Catherine Clark said that, but we have to use their suffering as leverage, which I think is sickening. You should never use a shutdown for more wasteful government spending. And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. And it just makes me spit and mad. I got to tell you, it just makes me so angry to use the American people's suffering as leverage. That should never happen.
So then what do you think is next? What can the American people look out for next? How long do you think this will last? Because once the clock strikes midnight, this will be the longest government shutdown in American history.
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic that, like I said earlier, Chuck Schumer can, pound his chest and say I was part of the longest shutdown, and the radical base will have turned out for the elections today. So I think people will be in a different state of mind tomorrow and perhaps Thursday. You already see conversations talking right now. So I am optimistic that the end of this week, beginning of next week, I already see things starting to break and talks starting to happen that weren't happening, right? I also see a lot of unions who typically aren't on the side of Republicans, but actually calling in an organized fashion, calling on the Democrats to open the government because a lot of their members are really hurting. So you're beginning to see some cracks in the system.
Well, that's an optimistic note, and we will end there. But Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me. And as we see developments, hopefully they're good ones with the government opening soon. I hope you can come back on and join me. Thank you so much for your time. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Have a great day.